At that time, I already knew I was fucked up. I knew that what I saw and what I did out there was I was not going to be normal again, and it definitely it changed my life.
All right, tell me your name and tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up and about your decision to join the military.
My name is Joshua Soto. I grew up in Sacramento, California. I got my brother and my sister. There were three of us, and we had both of our parents in our life. They were both hard workers. We grew up with them, and it was, I wouldn't say the easiest childhood. Growing up, it was really a struggle for me to really do anything positive in school. I never wanted to be there. I always felt like I was behind the curve. And the only thing I felt like I could do was fail at everything. I always got bad grades in school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but all I wanted to do growing up was make something more of my life. When I was I was a young man and I was like falling behind in school, people used to tell me I was slow and stupid, and I really wouldn't amount to anything. So that really that destroyed my psyche growing up. So I guess I never have had any self esteem behind me. I never had any pride in myself, and I kind of just took it at that. When somebody would tell me I was not going to be anything in my life or I wasn't going to amount to anything, I would take that to heart, and I would realize that, yeah, you know what, you're right. I probably won't amount to anything. And it wasn't until I was in ninth grade that I really started wanting something more out of my life. And that's when 9/11 happened. So I was around 15 years old. And I remember my mom woke me up for school that morning and she said, "Hey, wake up. Um, the World Trade Center was hit by a plane." And I was like, "What's the World Trade Center?" You know, like being a 15-year-old kid, I didn't really pay attention to anything else other than my skateboard. And so walking downstairs, I remember like being all groggy, but I remember looking at the TV and I saw one of the towers on fire. And I was like, huh. I was like, man, this is Hollywood at its finest. Because I was a kid, I didn't know what was going on. And then I saw the second plane hit. And then 10 minutes later, you hear, I don't even know if it was that long, but probably an hour later, you hear the Pentagon guy hit. And at 15 years old, I was freaking out. I didn't know what was going on. My parents were freaking out. Um, we got attacked, and I didn't even know what was going on. I just knew that I saw people jumping out of a building on live TV, and it made a pretty big imprint on me as a young man. I remember going to school that morning and immediately leaving. I made up some excuse, went to the nurse, said I had a stomach ache, whatever, because they brought in. I remember every room had they would roll in the TVs and they would show everybody like it was playing on the TV in every classroom. And I didn't want to be there. I didn't feel safe. I don't know what they were going to do to me. Like if we were going to get attacked here, I didn't know. But I wanted to go home, so I just left school, went home that day, and found out we were attacked by terrorists, and so that's what ended up solidifying me wanting to join the military and go into the infantry and fight for my country and avenge those that were taken out.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about boot camp, your initial experience in the military, first combat deployment?
Okay, so boot camp sucked. I wasn't one of those guys that you would say was prepared for boot camp. I was one of the ones that decided to kind of sit back and not do all the stuff you needed to do to get ready for it, because I kind of had it in my mind that I was like, you know what? Joining the Marine Corps, they're going to get me in shape. They're going to make me feel good. Like I'll get in shape. I won't have to worry about anything. Little did I know that that was probably the worst decision I could have made, because boot camp was that much harder for me. And I joined when I was 19 years old. So, kind of backstory on that. When I was around 16 years old, I started working at a sandwich shop, Togo's Baskin Robbins, and that's where I met my future wife. And so and I already had it in my mind that I was going to join the military ever since 9/11 happened. So I was like, straight beeline, that's where I'm going. Then I met my wife and girlfriend, but yeah, that settled it. So when I met her, I told her I wouldn't go in the military. I'll stay home, be with her, do everything like that, be a normal person, I guess, not go out to a war. And we got married at 18. 22 days after we basically turned 18, we got married. And we're still married to this day, 20 years later. But I promised her then that I wouldn't join the military. I was like, I won't do that. I'm going to stay home with you, stay home. We're going to have a family. And I was secretly going behind her back talking to an Army recruiter. Like some people say that they they go behind their back to like cheat on them or something like that. I went behind my wife's back to go talk to an Army recruiter about joining the infantry. And honestly, the Marine Corps was never really, I always felt like it was unachievable to be a Marine. I felt like it was the hardest of the training, and I was kind of nervous because I didn't have any self-confidence. And it wasn't until like my wife put her foot down and she said, no, you're not going to join the Army because you'll go out. I don't want to leave California. You have a big chance of staying in California if in the Marine Corps. I was like, but the Marines are hard. And she's like, yeah, you can do it. And I was like, okay. I was just, because anytime I've ever met a Marine my whole life, I'd look at them and I'd be like, I always thought they were infantry. I thought every Marine was infantry. I was like, man, those guys are just infantry everywhere. That's what Marines are. And little did I know that there was a bunch of other jobs. But when I went and talked to my recruiter, who ended up being a good friend of mine, he told me, he was like, well, why would you not want to challenge yourself to be the best? And he's like, Marine Corps infantry are the best. And he's like, why don't you want to challenge yourself to be that? And I was like, I don't think I can do it. And he's like, it's not about thinking if you can do it. He's like, you can do it, dude. And so with my wife's permission, not really, but with her behind me, and God, I feel like I had a kid at this time too. Like there's so much stuff. Like had my first kid right before we joined. I know I'm kind of hopping all over the place, but there's so much time frame in there. But yeah, my daughter was born 2 months before I shipped out to boot camp. And so, like I said earlier, boot camp was freaking horrible. Not just because I was out of shape, but because being newly married, 19 years old, never really leaving my house or my home, hometown, and then going away, leaving my 2-month-old baby girl at home, not knowing what's going to come of me, not knowing where this is going to go. I just know I basically signed my life away to go, and with the hopes to go and avenge what happened on 9/11. Boot camp getting there was it was definitely rough. I was overweight, so when I got there, they made me a diet recruit. And anybody that's a Marine that has been through boot camp and was a diet recruit, it was definitely a horrible time. You got put basically on like chicken and rice and like bread. And so I like went in overweight. And so about midway through boot camp, around 6 weeks in, we were going in and we were getting weighed in with our senior drill instructor. And, I step on the scale and he says, step off the scale. And I'm just like, all right. And he's like, take off your shirt. And so I took off my shirt and like my rib bones were like poking out. And like you could see all my ribs. You could see my hip bones kind of poking out too. And he was just like, double rats. And so gave me like double rations. And I remember like we go to the chow hall the next morning and I just got like this huge pile of food on there that I haven't had in like 6 weeks. So I ate like 2 bites and all the other the recruits around me are like looking and they're like, and I'm full off those 2 bites. I couldn't fit anything else in. And those recruits around me are just kind of like, are you going to eat the rest of that? And I'm like, I'm so full, have it. And I was letting them eat it. That was pretty miserable, losing that much weight. Because when I actually graduated, my wife, she like told me, when you're back on this 10 days leave, you're going to gain 10 pounds. And I was like, yes, ma'am, I will gain 10 pounds. And so proceeded to enjoy every delicious food I could until I shipped out to SOI. And I mean, boot camp was really a blur, honestly. It was so quick. It was about 3 months of really hating yourself. But earning that title of Marine was one of the greatest honors I've ever had in my life. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself growing up. And just having that, the Eagle Globe and Acre put in my hand, and I earned that. I earned it. So come take it from me. Yeah, but I earned that. So it felt good to earn that. It felt good to earn the title and join a long history of warriors. And so after that, I went to SOI West down in Camp Pendleton. Went to School of Infantry, and when you go to School of Infantry, you could either go to Infantry Training Battalion or you can go to MCT. So it's ITB and MCT. That's where it breaks up. And ITB, Infantry Training Battalion, that's where you go and get trained to be a grunt. And MCT is Marine Combat Training. So that's where they go to tell everybody, teach them basically a crash course. And that's for your like motor T, for your air wing. You get a month-long crash course and being an infantryman. And basically using a rifle, learning just basic skills with a rifle. Because, I mean, they say every Marine a rifleman, but I was an actual rifleman. So that was my profession. So can every Marine use a rifle? Yes. But not every Marine is a rifleman. So that's all I got to say on that. But yeah, going through SOI, went there knowing that I wanted to be a 0311 rifleman. And there you could be 0331, which is machine gunner, 41 and mortarman. At least that's the way it was back in the day. You had like 5 different sets you can go into: mortarman, assaultman, anti-tankman, machine gunner, and 0311. And so I wanted to be the guy that was the first in the door. I wanted to be kicking down that door and be the first one in, even though like the first guy through the door is 90% of the time going to get smoked. And I still wanted to be that point man. It was just something about that, being able to be the first one in there and having the split decision on you and like what your decision is going to be. And I felt like I could be faster than them. I felt that I was better than my enemy and I could be a lot quicker, and I was. So that was my profession. Going into 0311, that's all I ever wanted to do, and I was able to get it. It was definitely one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to do. My body's still paying for it to this day, but it's one of those things that I guess you can't really understand unless you've done it. And it was a good time. I don't know, pause.
So tell me a little bit about going to your first unit and the events leading up to your first
Roger.
deployment.
Okay. So after graduating in SOY, I got assigned to 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines out on Camp Pendleton. And we were in the 62 area over there, in like little camps that we were at. But I was assigned to Lima Company, 1st Platoon, when I first got there. And so getting there, I remember my unit was still in Iraq, so we were on the Remain Behind element, so the RB element, when they were still out there in Fallujah. And they were out there, like, I want to say it was like, they were coming back in like 2 months. So we were just waiting behind, because the way the Marine Corps does it is if your unit's out in country already, they're not going to send new guys out to the unit out there, because they'd rather you be back in the rear, train up, be prepared for when these guys get back, because you're just going to be a detriment for the rest of the platoon going out there, being a new guy, not knowing what's going on. So we stayed behind. We were basically doing mundane tasks around the camp, and a lot of like, picking up trash, doing yard work, all that stuff I didn't think joining the infantry would entail, but definitely did. And we do a lot of PT, just getting ready to get thrashed when our seniors get back. And so when they got back from Iraq, that was a rude awakening. Like it was basically, we were basically like fresh meat. Like when these guys got off the buses, and I remember we had to stack all their gear and everything. And I remember they're getting off yelling at us, getting their first beers in forever. So they're having a great time. And then now they have junior Marines, so they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna fuck with these guys. And so we definitely got screwed with quite a bit. And I'd say up until my first deployment to Iraq, it was pretty shitty. Being a junior Marine at that time, there was a lot of stuff that you didn't want to do, and you got treated like shit, but you didn't earn your place. And that's just the way it was. It's, I went in there with the understanding that no matter what I did in my life before, it didn't fucking matter. Because going out there and being with guys that have actually been out there in Iraq, actually been out there and fought and lost their fucking brothers, it really hit home that like I need to take everything these guys tell me, and I need to roll with it. I can't be a pussy. And that's what I took everything they taught me to heart. I always I would bitch about it a lot with a lot of stupid shit we had to do, but I'd never take it back. I still talk to my first team leader all the time, and it's been close to 20 years. So it's definitely, those men helped save my life in the training leading up to Iraq. And I like to think that they instilled something in me that I was able to at least save some future Marines' lives downrange. So we had around originally when I got to the unit, they got back, we started training up to go on a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And so that was canceled. Like after we were already training up, we went out to 29 Palms to do our training for the MU. And I remember our company commander came on the bus and like was like, hey, Lima Company. And then, everybody's like giving they're giving him their attention. He said, how shit changes, right? And all of us are like, uh-huh. And he's like, we're not going on a MU anymore. We're going to Iraq. And that was like, no matter if it was the reason I joined was to go to war, it was time to nut up or shut up. I had butterflies in my stomach. I was so scared. I was like, oh God. I was like, this is what I joined for. It's not playing anymore. I'm actually joining. I'm going to go to Iraq, what I joined to do. And it was definitely a nut check. It was, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, we trained all we could, but hearing all the stories from my seniors before me, it was just like, oh my God. And then we found out we were going to Fallujah. And yeah.
All right. Tell me about arriving to Fallujah and your time during your first combat deployment in Iraq.
Okay. So I deployed to Fallujah in September '07, and it was to April '08. So we deployed during the surge. So that was when President Bush at the time basically upped our numbers very big. So increased the numbers of troops that were in Iraq. And our original place that we were supposed to go to was Haditha, up near the Syrian border. But right before that happened, it switched. They're like, hey, you know how shit changes. Came in and they were like, we're going to Fallujah. And that's when all my senior Marines, because they were on what they call the Zidon area, outskirts of Fallujah, the deployment before, which was really heavily laden with IEDs, but they would tell us all the stories about what would be going on in Fallujah. And they were like, dude, that place is a fucking nightmare. Every night you'd see tracers, you'd see explosions. Like the units that were in there were getting fucked up every day. And so us going out there like that, our senior Marines were like, hey, like strap it on, gents. Like we're going to go into this city and it's going to be freaking bad. Little did we know that when we got there during the surge, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, our presence there was more of a policing force. Like we were just there basically deterring anybody from doing stupid shit. And the people around there, like we were kind of patrolling right along the Euphrates, our precinct area, because they broke us down with the Iraqi police, and our precinct was the Jubail precinct, and that was kind of it's kind of the slums of Fallujah, kind of the outskirts, like farm area. And we kind of had, my platoon was in charge of this section along the Euphrates, probably the biggest chunk of area out of all the platoons that broke up in Lima Company. And I was our squad RO at the time. So I was carrying the 119 Foxtrot radio out there, and I got pretty savvy with the radio. But other than that, like Fallujah was, best way I can explain it is Groundhog Day. I felt like it was the same thing over and over again, and it was very easy to get complacent. There were times out there that I remember you'd see wires coming out of a bucket, and you're just like, meh, walk up to it and kick it over. I think that's just your young, like me being a young man thinking I'm invincible, nothing can happen to me. But I look back on it and I'm like, dude, you got complacent. Because it was basically the way we had it set up is we had 2 days on post where we'd stand post for 2 days in our platoon and then 1 day patrol. And we kind of like switch out on that. And that was a whole 7-month deployment like that. As in being kinetic, it really wasn't. I mean, everything else was more popping off in Ramadi at that time. Like, I feel like the 04 push through Fallujah and everything really cleared it out. And I mean, 05 and the ones that came before us really ended up destroying the rest of what the insurgency was there and kind of pushed them out to other pockets like Ramadi, which was really bad at the time. So Fallujah was just a police in action by us. We didn't lose any men. No Marines were lost out there, which was awesome. And it was really kind of unheard of because the unit before us lost a few. Unit after us lost a few Marines, but our unit, I guess I don't want to be cocky, but I mean, we were pretty shit hot as a unit. The Iraqis that did know of 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines before that knew of us as the Butchers of Fallujah. So, I mean, that's a little bit of the history behind it in 04. So, when anything went down, it was not with 3-5, but it would be with like sister units that are out there. But we definitely we had that place on lock because I remember we had this National Guard unit out there with us, and they got like a grenade thrown in their turret and bounced off the dude's head and like falls inside the Humvee, and it didn't go off. A little sliver from the pin broke off in it. And literally, like, we were just like, dude, like, God's on your side or something. But We then saturated the AO for like 2 weeks straight, patrolling nonstop, and ended up rolling up anybody that was suspicious, or we had some idea that we're doing some suspicious activity. But other than that, we did a really good job in Fallujah. It was monotonous, but it was a pretty it was an average deployment, I guess, whatever average is. Came back from that one. I was definitely a lot more irritable. Out there, the Iraqis, I remember, especially in Fallujah, like they don't like dogs. So on the outskirts of the city, there was kind of like feral dogs everywhere, and we would have to like, if we were patrolling out there and we had our bomb dogs with us, we would have to put dogs down. And some of those dogs definitely were rabies laden. Like they had rabies, and they were we had to put them down. But that was something I didn't like doing. I didn't like killing animals. It was definitely not what I thought I was joining to do. But we had to do some of that stuff out there. Yeah, it was weird because I came back with I was very short tempered after that deployment. It was the one thing I could really remember about Iraq that kind of sticks in my head, and we were patrolling down the street, like one of the alleyways, and it was early morning, but like sometimes you get like like I felt like the hair on the back of my neck kind of standing up, like I had this sense like something was going to happen around this corner. And so when I popped this corner, when I came up to the corner on this alleyway, I popped it, put my rifle up, and I saw an AK barrel pointing down at me. And like this all happened within like a split second. But I clicked the weapon off safe and I'm going to pull the trigger. It's a 3-year-old boy, like 3 or 4. And when we got there, they had these little toy AKs that I don't know who the hell was giving the kids these, but I remember like the kid dropped the little toy AK, and like when I was aiming down on this kid, like I was split second from killing him, and I noticed like luckily my training was good enough to where we know how to differentiate between a threat and not a threat. But the kid dropped the gun, and I went up and I picked it up, and I saw it was a toy. And I smashed it against the wall, and I went into the house and I started yelling at the dad, and I started yelling at the mom. And I was asking, like, they didn't understand what the hell I was saying. I mean, they were probably frightened too. I don't know why their kid had that, but that's the one thing I could really think back that really stuck in my head from it was almost pulling the trigger on that kid. I'm glad I didn't, but that was kind of like one of the first things that really kind of made me be like, "Holy shit, this is this is war. This is what you hear about. This is what you hear about when somebody says like they did something like that." I mean, it was definitely it kind of stuck in my head because it was I could have done something pretty horrible for a kid having a toy, and I'm glad I didn't. But I mean, other than some IEDs that happened out there, not any on my platoon or anything, but some casualties, but none in our battalion. Um, that deployment was just, it was interesting, but it wasn't what I joined to do, I guess. I wanted to be on the front line kicking in the doors, right? I wanted to be bringing the fight. I didn't really want to be a policeman because that's not what I joined to do. So yeah, coming back from Iraq, it was a lot more irritable, but just suck it up, keep pushing. That's all you really know how to do then. It's not like you could, like back then, if you said anything about like PTSD or anything like that, you get like flagged. It'd like be like, oh yeah, you're never deploying again. That would be like a huge like mark on you. And it's funny too because like that totally changed towards like the end of my career. But yeah, there was a time when you couldn't say anything about it. You come back from war, you can't say that what you saw out there bugged you. You can't say that this little kid that you saw that we nicknamed him Dog Boy was all fucked up and crawling on all fours, eating out of a fucking bowl. Um, had a chain around his neck. His parents had a chain around his neck, and I don't know. It was different. It was definitely a weird experience going into and seeing human suffering on that level. I I guess like when I thought of war, I thought it was more like the movies or something. You got your clear enemy where it's at, and you take out the enemy. Everybody's high fiving. Like I didn't think of the human aspect of it, and it really it hit. Like seeing some pretty screwed up stuff that would happen to civilians, um, innocent kids. And I don't know. I guess that's why I don't. I get that's why I was there, right? To protect the people that couldn't protect themselves. Um, I don't. I mean, maybe what we did in Iraq ended up being a good thing in the long run because I guess I'll never know though, because I never could go back and talk to the people. Hopefully, one day, maybe it's like Vietnam or something where you can go back and talk to the people we once fought in the streets with. Um, yeah. So after that, we went on a Marine. We came back in April '08, and I came back to my wife and my daughter, and I was very, trying to be that normal dad. I was never the guy that could turn off what happened to work, like what happened at work, and like just sit in your car and have that 10 minutes to decompress. And I was never able to do that. I'd always bring work home with me, and so I felt like I often treated my kids like I would one of my Marines, especially my daughter. I'd yell at her and be really irritable with her over like nothing. But I mean, as time goes on, you realize that's PTSD, and that's just the stuff that our body's natural reaction to pretty messed up stuff. Um, so we came back from Fallujah. I like 7 months later, we went on a Marine Expeditionary Unit to the Pacific. That ended up training up a bunch of different militaries. So we went to Thailand, Australia, Okinawa, mainland Japan. Did I say South Korea? Philippines, and just like 6 different countries while we were out there, and basically a booze cruise. Just had a good time with, like, imagine going to a country with all your best friends and then just being able to drink and party and see like all these awesome, like, the sights of the country. It was really like something I didn't think I wanted, because I was like, man, I want to go back to war. That's what we trained for. But it was definitely it was fun. It was fun to have you, like, all your boys out there and just having a good time in all these different countries. Um, Coming back from that, so I know I'm kind of like hopping all over, but before that deployment, I got my wife pregnant. So we were pregnant with our second child, my son, and I wasn't able to be home for his birth. We were actually en route to Australia, and he was born, and it was like basically an act of God to be able to call home and be able to talk to her just right after she gave birth to my son. It was a real pain in the ass, but it was then that I decided I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, because at that time it was basically at my like 4 years, like I was getting up, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to get out of the Marine Corps? And I had 2 kids and a wife, and I was like, I'm 23 years old. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I really like where I am right now. Might as well re-enlist. So I re-enlisted, and one of the things they told us when we were re-enlisting, we were kind of asking them, we're like, where are we going to go? And they were like, well, there's a chance we could go to Afghan. And so me, like, I was talking to my wife, and she originally wanted me to leave the infantry and go be a combat instructor and train the infantry. But for me, being a combat instructor, since like in Iraq, we didn't get our combat action ribbon. And I mean, that's what an infantryman always thinks means the world. Like, hey, that CIB, that combat action ribbon, anything like that, it means something as an infantryman. And I felt like me going to be an instructor without having a combat action ribbon would be like, how can I teach these guys about combat if I'm not a true combat veteran? Even though shit we did in Iraq equaled combat. But I don't know, it was just one of those things that I thought I needed. And so with my buddies that were re-enlisting, and we found out that we might go to Afghan, I was like, well, if you guys are going, I'm going to go too. Like, I'm not going to let my friends go out there without me. Because if something happened to them and I wasn't at least there, or at least could have prevented something, not that I could have, but I don't know, it was just something on my mind. Like, I didn't want them to go without me. And I told my wife that, and I said, listen, like, my guys need me here. I'm the most senior guy here. I'm only going to be with the unit for another 2 years. And then I'll push out to be a combat instructor. And so my wife reluctantly agreed to let me stay with the unit. And so I stayed with 3-5. So like I was able to be with that 3-5 for 6 years of my career. And so after that, we got like, it was still kind of rumored we were going to Afghanistan. And it wasn't until, because I was in, at that time, I was 2nd platoon, 3rd squad leader. So I'm sitting there, I'm just like bored with all the mundane bullshit we had to keep on doing. It was basically repetitive over and over again. And this is like my 3rd full workup for another deployment. So I was just like, ugh. I'm like, all right, same thing over again. And I remember I was talking to my platoon sergeant, and I was like, I want something more. Like might want to try out for scout snipers. And at that time I was in great shape. And I was just like, I want a small unit tactic type thing. I was like, I'm tired of this full platoon type thing. Like, I'm over it. Like, I want something more like to where I could carry some high speed stuff and like have cooler gear and do stuff like that. And so I was contemplating signing up for the NDOC for snipers. And then my platoon sergeant came to me, and he told me that they were standing up a PSD, which is personal security detachment or detail, for the battalion commander and sergeant major. Now, I mean, from what I was thinking, because I knew there was a PSD signed up, like there were guys on PSD when we were in Iraq. And so I was like, I didn't think there was a PSD when we were on the MU. Turned out there was, but I just didn't know about it. But then they said they were standing up at PSD, and nobody knew if we were going to Afghan or anything then. I was just like, put my name on that. And by that time I was already, I was a corporal, and I was already like, all right, let's do this. And so they picked all of us NCOs, like handpicked us, and had us go out there, and we were sitting in the bleachers. There was like 22 of us there. And Sergeant Major comes out, and he goes, all right, who thinks we're going on a MU? And like us that had been to Iraq before are kind of just sitting there, just like keeping our hands down. But all the other junior Marines that were with us that got put over in PSD, they all stick their hands up, like, "Yeah, we're going on mute or something," and they're like, "You're like." Sergeant Major looks at us and he's like, "Where do you guys think we're going?" I was like, "I'm pretty sure we're going to Afghan, Sergeant Major."
All right. So tell me about showing up to Afghanistan and what took place in the province.
All right, so we deployed to Afghanistan in September of 2010, and before this, a little bit of the history about the area. The British military had that area on lock for the past 4 years. Not really on lock. They lost a lot of soldiers out there, and it wasn't anything against what they were doing. It was just a very heavily contested area. And any research that I would kind of do on Sangin before we got there, it was a. So let me kind of go back a little bit. We were told we were going to Sangin, Afghanistan. Sangin, Afghanistan is in the Helmand province. It's kind of tucked up near the Kandahar province and kind of near the Pakistani border. But in our province, it was kind of like the drug lords that were running that area. So it was a lot of opium, a lot of kind of as far as the eye can see, there was opium. And getting there, we knew that the British had a really rough time the past 4 years, and that's who we were going to replace. And it wasn't like the British were putting their flag up like they lost or anything. It was literally they didn't have the manpower to. I don't know if they had the manpower to keep holding it down like that because they were spread thin already. And so us going out there, it was really we were able to put the British in another area where they were able to hold down, still contested, but it wasn't such a wide area like Sangin was. And I remember, like they told us before we landed in Camp Leatherneck is where we first came into Afghan, and I probably landed there probably around September 19th, 20th of 2010, and I remember seeing mountains everywhere when we were coming in, and I was like, "Huh." I was like, "That's not like Iraq. Like Iraq's very flat where we were at. You see mountains everywhere. This is odd." So then, we're kind of doing our training, kind of getting the rundown on where we're going to be going, getting all our briefs before we go out there, and when we were in Fallujah, like if there was a casualty or something, you could just drive them probably around 15 minutes to Camp Fallujah and get them medevaced out of there. I remember loading the birds. It was me and my buddy, my fellow Marine in PSD, Casillas, and we were transporting a bunch of interpreters out to Sangin. So we had to pick them up. And I remember loading on the bird, and it took us about an hour and 15 minutes to get there flying. And that was definitely an eye opener for me. I was like, wait, we have to fly now an hour and 15 minutes just to get to our fob where we're going. So upon landing on the fob, it was kind of like something out of a Vietnam movie. So they tell you you're going to land in hot LZ. We came into basically a hot LZ. All the posts are shooting out. We all grab our shit like we're never going to see it again, run as quick as we can off the bird, throw ourselves behind some Hescos, and then you got people there in kind of like their flaks and some skivvy shorts, a little short PT shorts, and they're like, "Welcome to Sing," and something out of a freaking movie. But that was my entry into Sangin, and that was October 1st, 2010. And then from then on, it was hell on earth. Over the next 2 months, it was the most kinetic fighting that I can't really say out of history. I just know we were in firefights every fucking day, and basically all of Sangin was a fucking minefield. Um, like when you're a kid, and I like to explain this to people. When I was a kid, and like you're going through like the doctor's office, and you have the little black and white tiles on the ground, and you're like, "Don't step on the white ones. That's lava." That was literally Sangin. I was a With being in PSD, we had 5 vehicles attached to us, and first month we were there, my lead Vic, my buddy Kerr, he hit 3 IEDs pretty rapid succession within 2 weeks. So what they did is they pulled him out of the front Vic, and I was rolling Vic 5 at that time, and they put me into the front Vic, and I ended up being lead Vic for the rest of the deployment. And we were the hardest hit Marine unit that has suffered the most casualties out of any Marine unit in the Afghan war. I mean, I guess that's our title to fame, but it's really not. I mean, what we did out there was pretty impressive with how we changed that area, but it was done with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. October 13th was the day that really changed my life as a Marine. Like, because being in Iraq, we didn't really lose. I didn't lose any of my close friends. I didn't see any dead Marines. And on October 13th, I'll never forget. It took us like 2 hours to get up to Fob Inkerman, and we're getting out there, and our sister company, Kilo Company, is getting ready to do a assault into a pretty contested area where the Taliban was holding near a like Taliban power plant. And I remember I was talking with my buddies up there, and you just felt this huge explosion. Like you could feel like the shock wave in I don't know, like in your fucking soul. And I remember the battalion commander came out and he said, "Mount up, we're QRF." And so first thing I thought in my mind was like, holy shit, we got dead Marines or something. Like somebody just got hurt. And I remember as we're rolling up, like what took us about 2 hours to get out there, took us about 20 minutes to get to them. And as we're rolling up, you hear on the net, like they're doing their whole 9-line, their medical 9-line to call up the Kazovac to get the Marine out of there. And when they were saying special equipment, they said jaws of life. And I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, jaws of life? But he said jaws of life and priority. So if anybody knows anything about the medical triage levels, like priority is more like you're a walking wounded. So I was like, all right, Roger, like, what are these guys just sitting in there? And like, hey man, open up the door, get a freaking, get the jaws of life. And I remember as we're rolling up, Kerr radios back to me and he says, "Hey Soto, when you get online with their Vic, halt the convoy, and we're gonna set up a cordon." And I'm like, "Roger that." So I go to talk back on him on the radio, and I say, "How will I know where that Vic is?" And then right when I said I saw the vehicle, and it was one of our new up armored vehicles that we were all pretty impressed with, and it was blown in half. And the 4 Marines that were rolling in it were all killed. And so it was our job to pull them out of there. So without getting into too much detail, one of the Marines I ended up pulling out of there was actually from my hometown and went to the same high school as me. I never knew him. He just joined a year after me. But that one really hit home. because I remember after the whole day's events of October 13th, like, what we were doing out there was such a blur because I'm out there, we're trying to get these Marines out there. The only thing that was going through my mind was getting them home to their families. And because I mean, they don't just like, we don't leave anybody behind. So we were able to grab them and bring them back. And I remember after that day, like sitting back and finally like smoking a cigarette. And I remember just thinking like, oh, man, their families don't even know. Like that was the first thing that went through my head. It was like, holy shit, there's going to be some families that are about to have the worst fucking news they've ever had in their life. And little did I know that that Marine Victor Dew was from my hometown. So that was a very rude awakening for me, going into Afghanistan, and it just got worse from then on out. So 2 of my Marines ended up being murdered by the Afghan National Army. My buddy Brandon Pearson and Matthew Brome, they both relieved this. So they were on this fob, and all we know is like, I come back, like we were winding down after a day, and this was November 4th, 2010. And we were winding down. I was making like a cup of hot chocolate and kind of just sitting there winding down, getting ready to lay in my rack. And Kerr comes in and he says, hey, the Lima company just took 2 KIA. And I remember looking at him and I was like, what fucking platoon? And he's like, 2nd. And I was like, who from 2nd? And he's like, hold on. And he was like looking through his stuff and he's like, Pearson and Brome. And those were my 2, those were my guys that I trained up, they were with me on the MEU before that. And, I had a few years with these guys, and I didn't know what to do. So I put all my gear on, and at that exact moment, we were being attacked at the fob. Like there was they were attacking us at our fob. So I just see all these White Star parachutes going up, and I'm just like, fuck this. I'm done with this. And so I ran out to the post, and I get up on the post, and I have my my grenade launcher, and I'm going up there. I'm like, hey, Marine coming up, and everybody's like, come on up. And I was like, what's going on? And we just start getting hammered. Like the post just started getting lit up. Rounds in the post. We just start shooting back. I start shooting every grenade I have on my belt and on my 40 millimeter grenades. I just start lobbing them out. And I looked to the right of me, and I was just like, it was a multi-shot grenade launcher. So it was a 6-round, like HE. So you have like 6 shots on this thing. And I looked to the Marine next to me, and I'm like, is this thing good to go? And he's like, send it. And so I just sat back, boom, 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 and just started watching it all explode in this glorious, beautiful, the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And what ended up ending that firefight was we ended up getting like a 155 round came in, and then we had a Hellfire missile come in, and then we had a 500 pounder drop, and that was literally like 200 meters outside our fob. And so that all happened within like 2 hours of itself. Find out Pearson and Brome were killed. This firefight goes on, and then next morning we go out to where it all went down, like where Pearson and Brome were killed. And I remember because it was really like mixed up on the stories that night. People were like, we heard there was an explosion, all this, and then ended up turning out that they ended up relieving one of the Afghani police that was standing post. They're up there on the first watch, adjusting their MVGs, and he just sprays them both in the back. Killed them both. That was like my first taste of loss with like my close friends, and then it just compounded after that. And over that whole deployment, we lost 25 Marines, and had too many of my friends wounded. And I mean, one thing I always kind of like sit back is like, I was there for 7 months, and like I felt that, damn, like I came out of that unscathed, but I wasn't unscathed. I came back from that deployment severely messed up. To including, like, I lost my best friend out there. And so doing that definitely it made it all way too fucking real. And it definitely rang true in my head what my fellow Marine brother said to me: be careful what you fucking wish for. Because I bit off a lot more than I think I ever wanted to bite off. And I remember when I came back from that deployment, like, those other deployments I came back from, you know, make love with your wife, make love with your wife. After those first two ones, and it was like I came back from this one, and I could just do nothing but sit at the end of my bed, and I just bawled my eyes out. Like, it was still one of those things that has taken a long time to get over. Not really get over, because you can never get over it, but to make it to a point to where it's okay to talk about it. It was it was when I got back from Afghanistan that they stood our battalion down for like 3 months, to where nobody could leave. Like, we all had to stay there for like mental health checks. And at that time, I already knew I was fucked up. I knew that what I saw and what I did out there was, I was not going to be normal again. And it definitely it changed my life. I remember standing in a formation when we got back, and I was like looking around, and there's like maybe like 10 to 12 dudes per platoon, and then some guys on crutches, some guys in wheelchairs. But it was depressing. It was depressing for everybody. And like, me and my buddy, kind of like, we were already slotted to go to SOI West to be combat instructors there, start training infantry. And we both decided last minute to change our orders to the East Coast, so we could get as far away from 3-5 as we could. Because we felt like maybe if we brought in our perspective, at least I felt, if I brought in my perspective, go somewhere else, maybe it'll be better. But it ended up compounding, and ended up leading to retirement. So
Okay, let's talk about retiring from the Marine Corps and the years that followed after, and your journey to be where you are now.
Okay, so in 2013, I ended up getting medically retired from the Marine Corps. And a little backstory behind that was when I became a combat instructor, I ended up going out there and training up, and I did probably around 3 to 4 cycles of students through there before my mental health really started to deteriorate, and I was in a lot of pain. I didn't realize that I was working with a broken back. I had a piece of my spine that was broken off, and it was kind of just floating in my intercostal space between my L4, L5, and I was always in pain. And I was on painkillers, I was on antidepressants, I was on basically everything you could think of while I was drinking copious amounts of alcohol. And I never felt okay. It was basically, I went into my therapist, and it was after like this one hellacious weekend of drinking, and she said that I needed to be medically retired. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Turned out I wasn't. So in 2013, I attempted to kill myself. I was done. I didn't want to think about the war anymore. I didn't want to dream about it. I didn't want to have the nightmares. I didn't want to torment my family, my wife and my 3 kids at this time. I didn't want to torment them, and I thought they would be all better if I just offed myself. And so I took as much hardcore, or I took as much painkillers as I could to try and just go to sleep and never wake up again. Turned out I just had a really high tolerance, and just ended up passing out, and my wife called my command. Anyways, ended up getting medically retired. Went to a stint in rehab before I got retired, and finally getting out of the Corps in 2013, I was lost. I felt like I was a huge huge part of the Marine Corps. I thought that like without me there, stuff would stop, and then you just realize that it's just a machine that keeps on rolling. So that was probably the hardest thing for me to get over, is that my identity that I created in there, that Sergeant Soto, that Marine, that's not that guy anymore. And so about the 8 years I was in, it took me about 8 years to get right. Went to a lot of therapy, went through a lot of soul searching, went to a lot of fucking funerals. It almost seems like it's yearly that, if not yearly, like every 6 months you hear of another dude dying, and it just, like, it sucks. Like, but I don't know. I've closed myself off a lot to it, because I realize if you don't do the work, you can't expect yourself to get better. And I put in a lot of work over the years, just basically figuring out who the hell I am. And I think one of the best things that ever happened to me, other than my wife and my 3 kids, was I ended up getting into drones, like flying drones and instructing people how to fly drones and getting them certified in flying drones. And it's like, I can honestly say this kind of route I've been going definitely changed the perspective on my life. You know, I was 8 years in, and I like to say it took me 8 years to kind of break that fog and that haze of what you just went through. I mean, it's not that it's like not always there. It's just it's easier for me to kind of look at it in a different perspective. I know one thing that's helped me kind of through the years is none of my buddies, none of our friends that died would want us to destroy our lives over their death. I mean, we all joined for the same reason. Nobody held a gun to our head and made us sign the contract, you know? And it was all free will. And I think that's what was so pure about it too, is, and that's why it hurts so much, is because when you have those type of men from all walks of life, like especially around me, like guys you would never even think twice of, like passing on a corner. You'd probably get in a fist fight with these dudes if you never knew them. But they become tighter than family. And it hurts, but they wouldn't want us to hurt over their deaths, because I mean, any of us would have done it for each other. And if I would have died out there, I wouldn't want my buddies crying over me, you know? I want them to live their life to the fullest, because I can't anymore, you know? And that's kind of the way I've changed my perspective on things, you know? I'm going to be the best father I can. I know I have a lot of downfalls, but I'm going to make that up. Like, it's not over. Like, I know if this could help anybody, I've been there. I've been there. I remember I used to think of like people killing themselves as like the most selfish thing. Like, oh, you're so selfish, bro. Like, fuck you. Until I tried to do it myself. And is it selfish? Yes. But I don't look at it like, it's different kind of looking at it as like the way some dudes look at it. They're like, it's the only way out, but it's not. I know it's hard for, like, it's always the ones that you never guess are going to be the ones that kill themselves. And it's happened, unfortunately, way too many times. And if this could just reach out to anybody, just know that, like, you know, pick up that phone number. Still got the same one as always. And that's just for that reason, because I know there's going to be a time when, and it's happened numerous times over the years. I've had buddies call me up because they just go through their phone and they're just like, I wonder if this is Soto's number still. And it is. And so I'll pick up for anybody, man. But there's too many of us dying. It's such a waste of, like, our lives. Like, we need to, like, I don't know. I figured out what I can do just to try and push forward, you know? I think one of the craziest things was when I was, right after I got out, I went to my wife's, my wife had this family reunion type thing, and her great-grandpa was in the island hopping campaign in World War II. And so, you know, this guy was in a wheelchair. He had dementia. He couldn't really even remember, like, his like daughter's names or anything, you know. But then he looks at me and he goes, Josh. He goes, there's my Marine. And then everybody just stops and, like, just like pauses. It was like dead silent. Everybody just looks and they're like, he remembers Josh? And then he just goes and starts talking about a bonsai charge that came at him. And I was just like, oh my God. And everybody just stopped because they never heard that story before. But what it taught me is that it doesn't matter, like, how old you get. It was still there in his mind, and, like, he remembered it. And I was like, damn, like, that was something really profound for me to see, is that, like, you know, it's going to stay with us forever, but it matters what you do with it. And, you know, like, something big for me is, like, I want my kids to, I want them to understand, because every time Memorial Day comes around or anything comes around every year, my kids know exactly who made the sacrifice. And it's definitely, it's something that has been an honor to me to carry on my brother's legacy and say their names and make sure they're never forgotten, because it's the only way they live.